Alright, we're going to do a couple of the problems from the Proving Trig Identities classwork paper. It says, prove the following using the equations from your toolkit. So again, just like we did the other day, we're going to try to change one side of the equation into the other side of the equation. So it's helpful to start with usually the more complicated side, but technically you could really go either way. But starting with the more complicated side is a lot of times easier because you can make that simpler rather than expanding this crazy side. So starting with number one, I'm going to change this side, and I see a tangent, so I'm going to change that into sine over cosine. So I have sine of x times sine of x over cosine of x, and then plus regular cosine of x. So really these two things could be multiplied together for that. So we have sine squared of x over cosine of x, and then plus cosine of x. Okay? So we're adding fractions, we need the same denominator, so I'm going to multiply this, maybe I'll pretend that's over 1 right now, and I'm going to multiply this cosine and the bottom times a cosine. So really this top will turn into cosine squared, and this side will turn into cosine of x. So now they're a common denominator, and I can actually combine the tops together into one fraction. So sine squared plus cosine squared, if we look at our toolkit, that is worth 1. That's the main Pythagorean identity right here. Sine squared plus cosine squared is worth 1. So really, we get the top of our fraction right here. If I combine these together, tops, it's a 1, and they keep the same denominator, 1 over cosine, so that just proved our left side is the same as the right side, so we're done with that one. Okay? So number 2, cosine squared of x times this whole quantity, maybe that's, put that in brackets, that might be better. 1 plus tangent squared of x, and that quantity is all together is worth 1. We want to prove that that's happening. So what we can do there is let's change 1 plus tangent squared of x. That is also worth secant squared of x on our toolkit here, right? So that's worth secant squared. So let's change that. And so we got cosine squared of x times secant squared of x. And we're trying to say that that's worth 1. So if you know secant squared is actually the reciprocal of, why am I putting an equal sign there? Of cosine. So secant is really 1 over cosine. And since the secant one was squared, the cosine will be squared. And then therefore cosine on the top, on the bottom, that's just worth 1. And that's what we wanted it to be.